British Grand Prix review, along with all the latest news, and Mark Webber. He has decided where he's going to be racing next year. All will be revealed in this week's Lewis Round F1 Update. So we'll start off with the British Grand Prix, and Mark Webber takes his second race victory of the season, joining Fernando Alonso as the second driver to win more than one race so far. Well, it looked as though the race was going to be completely Alonso's. He started on the harder compound tyre, while the rest around him started on the soft compound tyre to get rid of it early on. Well, Alonso pulled away, had a gap at one point of 5 seconds. Webber pitted earlier, and the second pit stop was the crucial one, where Alonso had to change the soft tyre, and then we'd find out how competitive was that Ferrari on that softer tyre. Felipe Massa looked pretty good early on in the race, so it didn't look as though it was going to cause the Spaniard that much trouble. But it did, and within a few laps, the Australian was catching him at a rate of knots. Alonso just looked as though he had no front end with the soft tyre once that grip had gone, and he was losing about half a second a lap, even more by the closing stages. Sebastian Vettel, he took third, a quite comfortable race for him. Had a bad start which cost him a potential chance of more. He fell behind Felipe Massa, and Michael Schumacher was already ahead, of course. But he got past Massa and Schumacher after the first stops, but struggled with setup wise. He couldn't quite match the pace of the two up front, and an easy third place. He wasn't troubled at all from the drivers behind him. Felipe Massa took his best position so far since 2010 by finishing 4th in the race. Got past Schumacher, a brave overtaking manoeuvre, stuck it down the inside. Didn't quite have the pace to match up Vettel, but he wasn't losing ground either. But the big disappointment was McLaren, finishing 8th and 10th with Hamilton and Button. This track was meant to suit them, their cars. They were very similar. It's a very similar circuit to Barcelona, and in Barcelona, Hamilton was 0.6 seconds clear of anyone else in qualifying. So they were all saying how Valencia was just one of those occasions where the McLaren didn't suit the McLaren because it's slow corners. It's not our strong point. We're not going to be that quick. But at Silverstone, it's completely different. It's where our strengths are in high-speed downforce. We're going to do really well here. It didn't happen. McLaren were nowhere. In the wet, they were pretty strong, but in qualifying, when the track dried out, they had no temperature, or Hamilton didn't have temperature in his tyres. Button suffered a similar fate as well. But in the race, in the dry, they were just nowhere. Pace-wise, they were very average. They were all right at the beginning of the race, but as the fuel lightened, as the fuel burnt off, Hamilton tended to start struggle and fell back rather than moving forward. Button did well, considering he started 18th and got up to 10th. But he as well was on a similar pace to Hamilton, which just proves how bad McLaren are struggling. There are upgrades that they said they were bringing here as well, at British Grand Prix as well, which they did but didn't work, it looks like anyway. So they're saying they're depending their season on the upgrades in Germany. McLaren seems far too inconsistent with how it gets the tyres working, which is why you saw in Canada a perfect example where Hamilton won. Jenson Button was 2 seconds off the pace in an exactly identical car. So they have got some head scratching, and they have to work fast. In the next 2 races, we've got back-to-back Germany and Hungary, and then a summer break. And then you're hitting the home stretch, really, of the 2 classic European races of Belgium in Spa and Italy of Monza, and then you're off with the flyaway races. So they have to get their act together now. Well, the other big news story today is that Mark Webber has signed a new 1-year deal at Red Bull. Mark Webber has been focusing hard this season, and he's done a lot better than he did in 2011. He struggled with the steering of the Red Bull and the tyres, the Pirelli tyres, when they were introduced last year. But this year's been a big turnaround for the Aussie. He's been able to compete with Vettel in qualifying and the race. He's won 2 races now thanks to his British GP victory in his adopted homeland. And there was a big rumour circulating him about going to Ferrari, and he made no lies about it. He had held talks with the team. He felt as though with Red Bull, they're at the top. With Adrian Newey, you're always going to get a quick car. With Ferrari, would he get the same chances? Alonso has made no secrets about how he has he has the right to make a decision on who's going to be his teammate. He's also quite clearly the number one driver for Ferrari. Webber, would he have a chance of getting the championship if he was at Ferrari? Also, there's a lot of talk about Sebastian Vettel perhaps being in Ferrari come 2014. So would he only have 1 year in the seat? Well, with Webber signing with Red Bull, you'll hear a door slamming shut on Hamilton's chances of being with the team next year. And this gives McLaren a much stronger standing point in the negotiations. Hamilton wanted a 20 million euro contract. McLaren aren't willing to pay 20 million. They want to give him a pay cut because of the current economic issues surrounding the globe at the moment. Hamilton now, with the fact his team have been trying to push, his management team have been trying to push forward this heavy deal, they haven't got anything to come back on. Mercedes aren't winning regularly at the moment. Ferrari, he will never go there with Alonso at the team. And Lotus, I don't think they'd have the money to support what his management team are trying to get. So I think personally Hamilton's going to end up having to sign a deal again with McLaren, albeit at a pay cut. And also, with this news coming in, it also gives a chance for Felipe Massa. He may actually, despite a couple of months ago being a write-off, including myself, saying that Massa wasn't going to be able to hold on unless he did something brilliant, he has improved. But because Webber isn't going to Ferrari, and it looks as though no one else would be able to go to Ferrari, unless Sergio Perez perhaps, but Ferrari have indicated previously that they felt he was too inexperienced and made too many mistakes. So in terms of that, what they said, Ferrari aren't interested in signing Perez until perhaps 2014. Massa might just get another contract. Maybe it'll be a year contract, more likely a year's contract. To be honest, where else can you go if you're Ferrari? Especially if you've got Sebastian Vettel apparently knocking on the door in 2014. Why not give Massa another year's contract for 2013? And then if the Vettel deal actually goes ahead, then you dispose of the Brazilian. So it looks as though Massa yet again will be surviving with the Italian team. And finally, Singapore Grand Prix organisers have dismissed reports that they have agreed a 5-year contract extension with Bernie Ecclestone. It was launched from a newspaper called Today that reported that a new deal had been agreed between the organiser and Ecclestone to continue hosting the race for the next 5 years. Well, that's it for today's F1 update. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back on next week as always. Check www.lewisroundf1.co.uk as well as Lewis Round F1 on Facebook and Twitter. As I said, next week we'll have more news. But until then, have a great week.